begin.
Woo! We're live.
Hi.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's fine.
Good.
I had a doctor's appointment to get, I have to do them every 3 months. I think I may have talked about this on the pod before, but for like my ADHD meds, I have to go in every 3 months. Sometimes I have to pee for them. It's weird. Driving there and like waiting for the appointment is literally like 10 times as long as the actual appointments. I've clocked them and they're 5 minutes. And this time, the psychiatrist just couldn't get her computer to work because it's a Zoom. Like it's pretty much a Zoom meeting. So I have to drive in for that, which is silly, or drive like downtown for the Zoom. And they
Oh,
they're just like, sorry, we'll try something else another time.
no.
Yeah.
Excuse me, no.
I mean,
I
we're not
took
going
all
to
the time
charge
to
you.
do
And I was
this.
like, no, of course not. But I was just like, why can't she just call now? Like, why is it like maybe she can call me later or something? And because I just told them I have the day out, but I was just like, no, I have things going on today. Like, I can't, I'm not coming back and I can't do a phone call later today. And then they
No.
asked if I could come in on Wednesday. And I'm just going to be like, no, like, I'm not coming in again. I'll see you in 3 months.
Also, what's the point? I don't get the whole driving in to do a Zoom. Isn't the whole point of Zoom that you don't have to leave your home?
Yeah. And I guess it's technically like, actually, I think it is Zoom. Yeah. It's because they like get my vitals, but my vitals are the same every 3 months. Like my weight fluctuates like maybe a pound or so one way or the other, or
Right.
maybe like point 0.2, like it fluctuated point 0.2,
Why couldn't they just take your vitals and then she could call you later
right? So
when you're at home?
that was just like annoying.
Shall we get into it? I don't really have any anecdotes or updates or anything.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what this episode's about.
Well, I thought, with the current sort of end of the world vibe we've got going on and, the horribly negative political atmosphere, that I would just double down and we would talk about another time of panic and chaos in 1999 called Y2K.
Oh my God, yes. I am so excited. I've wanted to do Y2K. I'm excited that we get to talk about it.
Okay, sweet. Well, why don't we, you know what? I'm going to do the trivia later. Remind me though, because I still kept it up top. For those who may not know, who are not old millennials like us, Y2K was a computer flaw that programmers thought would take down all the computer systems when the year changed from 1999 to 2000. And this was because most computer systems had shortened the year down to just the last two digits. So the fear was the computers would freak out when going from 99 to 00, thinking that the year was actually 1900 instead of 2000. I also feel like you're going to have a lot of good insight into this because I feel like you understand computer stuff more than I do. So please jump in at any moment, especially if I say something stupid.
For sure. I feel really bad. I wasn't listening super hard because I was looking up a book as a kid that I had about Y2K
Oh, good.
that I was obsessed with.
Okay, what was the book? Tell me. No.
Okay. It's called Y2K-9, The Dog Who Saved the World.
Yes, it is.
And the dog's
What's
name
the
is...
synopsis?
Okay, I'm going to read it off of Goodreads. Bite's been trained to do a tough job. He sniffs out computer bugs on missions too dangerous for humans. But lately, he's just been killing time, chatting with geeks online. Then, Bite receives an emergency email. The sewer system's not quite ready for the Y2K. And as the new millennia someone's about to unleash a virus that could back up toilets to the year 3000. Bite's about to spring into action, and he's asking the geeks to help. The tagline is, in a chat room, nobody knows you're a dog. Smiley face.
They're not wrong.
They are not.
I like that the premise of Y2K in this book is that like toilets are going to be the biggest problem.
Yeah, I mean, it was for kids, so I feel like they were like, let's make this a little bit.
No, I love it.
I
I
do
think
love
that's
it.
fantastic.
Also, honestly, like in modern society, that would be pretty horrific.
You're right. Yeah. Sewage that is outside of the sewage containment areas is not great. So I rescind my scoffing
I sent
and I apologize.
I sent you a picture of the book cover.
Okay.
It's so good. I bet I still have it.
I hope you do.
I mean, it's probably in mom and dad's basement somewhere, but I bet it's
So the
there.
dog's name is Bite, as in like BYTE,
It
I
sure
assume.
is. Yeah.
Sweet.
It's so good.
I love that so much. Thank you for that. Okay. Here's the thing. Here's something I didn't know, but I bet Bite did know, is that the problem with this two-digit year became apparent as early as the 1980s. Did you know this?
Yeah, I think because I listened to a long time ago. I listened to a podcast,
Oh.
and I wish I could plug it right now because it's a great podcast. I just forgot the name, but they talk a lot about. I think it might be just called "You Were Wrong About," and then they pick up a
Oh.
lot of things from not even exactly pop culture, just society, things like
Mm-hmm.
Y2K, or for instance, like Stranger Danger, or
Okay.
like people poisoning Halloween candy. Like they pick up those huge things that we've all heard about and probably. I mean, now we might be a little bit more informed on, but just things that we are wrong on. And
Okay.
they did an episode on it, and it's pretty good. I would recommend people check it out, but after ours because ours is great.
Well, we're only a couple minutes in. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I probably should have listened to that episode. That would have been good. But I just used the interwebs. Well, anyway, so we knew about this. We, not you and I, because, we were not born yet, but people knew about this as early as the 1980s. It was actually individuals who worked at Social Security that started
Hmm.
discovering they couldn't calculate figures for after 2000, which seems like it might become a problem. And in 1994 is when they started going through all of their computer code to try and fix the problem. But it wasn't actually until the late 1990s when the problem was becoming more imminent that Congress finally started looking into the issue. In 1998, President Bill Clinton, God, you remember that guy?
Oh
Remember
man.
him?
I mean, barely because I was like a baby, but
Oh, Bill, you were like a baby. Ish. You'd have been 6.
okay.
You know
And
what?
you
You were
know
old
how
enough
6-year-olds love presidents.
You know what? You don't get a pass just because you were 6
That's
years
good.
old, okay?
I'm going to ask your youngest her favorite things about the current president, and then I'm going to be like, "Wow, how uneducated you are. Your parents have really failed you."
She's going to be like, we have a president? I thought we had a queen.
You'd be like, "Why isn't it a girl?" I'm going to be like, "Actually, valid and great question."
Yes, we don't even have time to get into that. Anyway, Mr. Bill Clinton, who you fondly remember, signed an
God,
executive order
please don't put
creating
that out there.
creating it's too late a council on the year 2000 conversion. We spent billions of dollars globally in IT and software development to create patches and workarounds to keep this massive crash from happening. And while expensive, the solution was pretty simple. Change the two-digit year to 4 digits. I mean, it's really what it came down to. And so I had to ask myself, Riley, why were we using only 2 digits in the first place? And the reason comes down to, surprise, surprise, money. When computers were becoming popular, the software for data storage was super expensive. And people also weren't convinced that this technology was even going to stick around. So they cheaped out, and programmers used the 2-digit code instead of 4 digits for the year to save on space and money. And
Yeah.
isn't that how most problems start, is just by being cheap?
It's so funny because it was just like a little shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things I do remember from the podcast that I didn't know until I listened to it. It was probably like a year ago, is like you said earlier, that people did know for decades. And it was just like we'll get to that.
Yeah, that's a tomorrow problem.
And then tomorrow was 2000 and they're like, fuck.
Like, oh shit, we should have done something. Now we have to throw billions of dollars at the problem to get it worked out. That's how we do. Let's shift to some trivia real quick. And this might be a gimme, so I might end up cutting it. But do you know what Y2K stands for?
Isn't it like year 2000?
It's literally just year 2000.
Okay.
And it's also referred to as the millennium bug. I don't know that I've ever heard it referred to that way.
I've heard it. I'm sure in the book, it sounds like something that like older people who are out of date but were writing about technology would use.
Fair enough. Do you know in what decade computer programs were first written?
Ooh, I feel like it. So I know that, like, the internet is because of the Navy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Computer programs. I feel like I'm going to answer stupidly. The 50s?
You're not far off. The 1960s.
Okay.
Which surprised me. That's way earlier than I thought.
I mean, computers were used by military and they didn't become something that like the public could consume for a couple decades. And then it also was something where that like even when it was like you could technically get a personal computer, a PC, most people still couldn't afford them and they didn't become like standard household items for a long time. So yeah, I was thinking it'd be like 1950s or like 1960s because I'm like that seems like the time that military and vague scientists would be doing computing.
That does make a lot of sense, but I think because in my child brain, we got our first, big old clunky desktop in the 90s. I just assume like that's when computers started. That's when it all began.
No, I don't think that's a silly thought. I think like
Thank you.
I've forgotten a lot that I've learned about this because I go through periods of like intense hyperfixation on subjects. And so I've read a lot about this. I just my memory isn't terribly great. I'm good at remembering concepts, but not so much like the nitty-gritty, the minutia.
That's not what we're here for anyway. Don't come to us for the nitty-gritty, please. We're like a fuck. See, this is what I mean. I don't even know what we're like. Not on it today.
Do you want to be like that cool sand stuff? No, that's nitty-gritty.
Yeah, sand is notoriously nitty-gritty.
But I like, the sand stuff I got your kids where you can like build with it. I want to be that.
I love that stuff. For my youngest birthday, I got bluey themed, I think it's called like slimy sand. And it's literally like a combination between slime and the kinetic sand stuff that you're talking about. Ooh. It is the weirdest, coolest thing because you can like stretch it like slime, but it still has like that soft, sandy texture.
I need it.
You do need it.
Send me
It's amazing. Some. I might take it. I should send you some. I got it from Target.
You're approved.
You're approved.
Oh, I could probably get it then.
Oh, yeah.
But I would prefer it sent to me.
I would prefer if you would purchase it for me.
Yes.
I'm not even, you know what? I'm going to ask this question, then probably cut it because I forget you're much smarter than me. And
I am not. No. Have you heard me? I had to listen back to myself talking and I'm not very great at, it's why I always got anxious in school is that like, I'm not really great at articulating intelligent things.
Yes, you are, first of all, but
I read a lot, but I'm not great at rephrasing it.
Neither am I. What are we doing?
I don't know.
We're not very good at details. We're not very good at talking well. We're not very good
Listen to our podcast.
It's going to be great. We're kind of funny sometimes when we're not super tired, period.
What are we doing here?
What are we doing? Do you know the difference between software and hardware?
Why are you just laughing because you said soft and hard?
No, I'm laughing because you know why I put this question on here is because my daughter learned this in 3rd grade and I thought it was cool.
Oh, well, that is great. Wait, which one? Is the littlest isn't in?
The littlest is in kindergarten, so she hasn't been to 3rd grade yet.
I know their ages, but I don't remember what grades it correlate they correlate to anymore. Okay.
No, I get it.
Is software like the program and hardware is the It's like the pieces for the actual whatever shit you're building.
Exactly. It's the pieces of the shit. Very good. Now I got to find my spot again. So back to the panic. A big part of why people were especially freaked out is because they were worried they wouldn't be able to access their bank accounts, understandably. Banks don't always have the most up-to-date technology. They're not really known for being, that way. So there was a lot of concern over their systems being able to handle the year switch. And people were convinced that they wouldn't be able to access their money on January 1st, which is a big deal if you can't get access to any money and the world is burning. There were also concerns over interest calculations. So instead of calculating 1 day of interest, computer programmers thought that the software would calculate a rate of interest for minus 100 years, which would have been great for people with loans, not so great for the banks. I mean, can you imagine?
God, that'd be
100
cool.
years of interest minus in the minus.
God, I would love that for some credit cards right now.
Right? Wouldn't that be great?
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been fine, I think. Power plants, those things also need routine computer maintenance for safety checks on water pressure and radiation levels. So an incorrect date could throw these calculations off and cause some issues. So people were concerned about that. And as if flying isn't stressful enough for some of us, airline schedules were also predicted to be thrown off because of Y2K.
This is just, it's funny hearing about it because it's not... Like, what do you remember as a kid of Y2K or what it was? Unless, sorry, if I'm jumping the gun here.
No, I'm glad that you're inserting some of this in here because I was really excited to get into this topic and I learned a lot, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I have incorrect memories about Y2K because when I first started thinking about this, I thought, oh yeah, I remember because I used to work at this little grocery store and people were concerned about how that was going to affect business the next day. That's not correct. In 1999, I was 10 years old. I was not working at the grocery store. So my memories are a little mixed up. I think because we went to that grocery store so much as children, I'm guessing I was hearing a lot about it at the grocery store.
And then
I went on, yes.
Teenager worked there, so you mashed.
Yes. So I do remember hearing a lot about it. And I remember essentially the thing I kept hearing as a kid was basically that everything was going to come crashing down. We wouldn't be able to do anything. Things in general were just going to stop working. I
was so young during it.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of thought it was about aliens.
I can see why you would, though.
Because
the name Y2K kind of sounds extraterrestrial.
It seemed very futuristic and people were so scared. And now it's kind of funny looking back on it because I'm just I know it's going to be a lot of work and it's going to cost a lot. But if this were happening now, I wouldn't be scared. I would just be yeah, they're just going to have to spend a lot of time patching.
Right.
And shit will happen. But the fact that people were truly end of the world stocking up on stuff.
Well, and we'll kind of get into some other factors that contributed to that. But I was having the same feelings you are when I really got into researching it, that none of it sounded that scary now. And maybe it is because us, normal people have a better understanding of technology than probably adults did back in 1999. I think it was probably a lot easier to be influenced as far as this is a huge problem and
accurate
people. Yeah. So I think that was part of it for sure.
I also think that at this point, working the number of years I have in news, I worked during the Clinton-Trump election. And there was one point where people were legitimately kind of concerned because our president at the time was getting into fights with North Korea on Twitter. And there was legitimate from level-headed people concerned about North Korea is unhinged enough. What if they retaliate? And I just remember thinking maybe it's time we all go. No, I was just what happens kind of. So I think the idea of Y2K, I'd be I guess none of our technology works for a little bit until they sort it man, okay, just what happens. I really think working in local news like permanently changed the wiring in my brain a bit, and not maybe for the better.
I can see why it would, though. And I think in general, as millennials, like we've already seen so many crises, that Y2K that's like at the bottom of the list now. Like that's
Yeah.
the least concerning thing that we've ever lived through.
Literally a year after that was 9/11.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that too a little bit.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, there is a bit of a connection there, which is interesting. So yeah, I was a little bit underwhelmed looking back on this because I'm like, guys, you took a shortcut.
There's so much worse.
Yeah. We all know what happens when you take shortcuts, fix the digits. And yes, I'm sure it was time consuming and it definitely was expensive, probably because we didn't get started on it until it really was like an emergency situation.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you procrastinate.
And take shortcuts.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Well, as we have already been talking about, when the calendar flipped to January, I think we all felt the same sort of relief/disappointment that those religious cults that predict the end of the world feel when the sun rises another day. Nothing really happened. But speaking of religion, the fact that the year 2000 marked the second millennium since the birth of JC, that did have people thinking that the millennium was the global end times, which is probably a big part of all the panic that ensued. It wasn't necessarily the technology bit. It was these pastors and religious type people who were preaching to others that the end of the world was in fact coming and writing books about it and telling people to stock up on supplies and that sort of thing.
It also reminds me of like, I just looked it up quick because I couldn't remember when it was, but remember when like the Mayan calendar was like done and it was like 2012? And
oh, that's right.
Sorry, I sometimes I take more time to think because I'm like, there are going to be other people listening to this and this will live on.
Mm-hmm.
Like religion. Do we really need like...
Your face. I'm sorry. When you said that, I could see your hands like out on your hip. You're like religion.
Do we need it? It's just a callback to the other, like the last episode.
Yeah, we did get into this a little bit.
My star sign is like, girl, your color is purple and your days are Thursdays. And like religion can either be like, if you're sad, pray to God, or it can be, you can beat women. The world is ending.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to be racist. Gay people deserve to die. I'm just like, do we need it? Like, do we need to tolerate stupid thoughts? This isn't a call for violence. This is just...
No. In fact, it's a call for the opposite because the Bible is very violent, notoriously.
Yeah. It's more of a call just to get like a squirt gun, or like not even that. Let's not get a gun. Let's get a squirt bottle like I have for my cat. And when people start... I just want to like whenever somebody starts saying something just ignorant, and I'm going to say I include a lot of religious things with that. I just want to be like... And I get respecting people's beliefs to an extent, but I also think that we need to... This was something, when I was in local news, we had a lot of discussions because this was during the Trump and Clinton election, and news is supposed to give equal airtime. And I started arguing, I'm like, but if things are factually incorrect, should we give equal airtime? Like, if it's not a difference of opinions, if it's not that, if it is factually incorrect. Like, I got in trouble because I hid a comment. I also managed our social media. I got in trouble because I hid a comment that was talking about how Jews were not killed during the Holocaust. And it was like, hey, we need to, like, we can't impede the public's discussions. And I'm like, well, one, this is a page, and it's it's not private, but I'm like, we own the page. We can hide or do whatever we want. And I'm like, I have let people say incredibly sexist and homophobic things here, and religious things that I haven't hidden, because even though I don't agree with them, I'm like, they're having a discussion, but I'm like, this is just factually not true. This isn't a belief. This is just factually not true. And sometimes I think people like this is my one, not my one, this is one of my criticisms of the left, and I'm obviously incredibly left, is that sometimes we get so far into like respect everybody's opinions and that I think we actually end up aiding.
Yeah, we won't draw that line.
Yeah, we end up aiding very harmful ideas because we're like, well, we can't, like, you know, we don't want to question somebody's belief system or that. I'm like, okay, but if their belief system is saying that like a 13-year-old girl who was assaulted shouldn't be able to get an abortion, I think we should attack that. Like, I think that is completely fair. Also, churches should fucking pay taxes. You can cut whatever you want.
Getting political.
Sorry, you can cut whatever you want. I just needed to share these thoughts with you specifically.
Let's go, girls. And if you disagree, that's okay. Just don't be nasty.
Yeah.
Okay?
Also, at this point, baby girl worked in local news. You cannot say anything meaner to me than the fucking flat earthers have said.
Yeah, no, trust this girl. She's seen it all.
I was called a bitch cunt. And like, what pissed me off the most was I'm like, pick one. Because
right, it's not even creative.
It's poor writing. And I'm sorry if
Yeah.
I've already like shared this anecdote with the podcast. I can't remember, but I'm just like, bitch or cunt, you have to pick one. Otherwise it just really weakens the overall effect.
Yeah.
And it makes
Choose
it
your
comedic.
fighter.
And you're not trying to be comedic. You're trying to be hurtful. And right
Right.
now I'm not hurt. I'm just embarrassed for you and your poor writing.
Well,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. I have a quote here from an American Baptist pastor. Are you ready for that?
Oh, God. Yep, let's go.
So we were just talking about how some, not all, religious leaders were really feeding into this. It's the end times. And Jerry Falwell was one of these people. He said, quote, Y2K may be God's instrument to shake this nation, to humble this nation, to start a revival that spreads over the face of the earth before the rapture of the church.
Do you want to know why I don't believe in God?
Jerry, why?
Is because God didn't open a chasm and just like drop Jerry into it. God damn it, Jerry. You're a fucking idiot.
Jerry Falwell, ladies and gentlemen. There were also books like Y2K equals 666 and Spiritual Survival During the Y2K Crisis that capitalized on the fear and uncertainty of the year 2000. Now, our good friend Bill Gates, on the other hand, stated he expected a period, quote, where people are distracted getting their things ready, but in terms of the problems that will occur, it will be below the middle of the panic that some people have suggested. So just to recap, the chairman of Microsoft, the daddy of computers, is being super chill about Y2K, and yet we spent billions and the world goes fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Sounds about right, but...
Yeah, instead of talking, like listening to the expert, where people are listening to Jerry, who I guarantee couldn't even set up his voicemail by himself.
Dag nabbit. Well, let's talk about the very few minor issues that did actually happen, shall we? This quote is directly from a Forbes article that I'll cite. I'm just going to read this whole thing because it's so very well written. Quote, the 0 hour came first to the South Pacific. In New Zealand, as a philosophy professor named Dennis Dutton later wrote, champagne and skyrockets were the only explosions of interest since telephones, ATMs, cars, computers, and airplanes worked just fine. Midnight after midnight came and went around the globe. In Australia, a machine that printed bus tickets got the date wrong. In Italy, some prison inmates briefly had their sentences extended by a century. In England, a tide gauge failed. In the U.S., a spy satellite ran on a backup system for a few hours. In Hong Kong, police breathalyzer equipment stopped working, admittedly on the worst night of the year for that. Around the world, cash registers here and there spat out the date as 1900, leaving customers with receipts they might want to keep as souvenirs. End quote.
But that last one seems kind of cute and fun.
Right? So, yeah, there were issues, but nothing that couldn't be corrected, other than maybe the breathalyzer thing, but... You know,
with the inmates, were those taken care of and noted?
I assumed yes, but as you're saying that, perhaps I shouldn't assume that.
It's one of those things that you hope, because it's like it mentioned in the article that people were aware of, but then you think of like, you just think of like the prison system, at least in America, and you're like, what?
Maybe in like, it probably took them like another 20 years. They're like, okay, we're aware of the problem and we're working on it. Let's just go with yes. I'm sure it was corrected. I'm sure it was fine.
That might be the most controversial thing we've ever said.
And it also wasn't, because it wasn't here, I don't think. Italy.
Oh.
I don't know whether Italy has their shit together or not.
I'm going to say Italy's not my problem.
No. We've got our own problems. Italy.
So many. Italy, Jesus.
God, get off our dicks.
For real.
A couple other things that happened were, and this one's a little bit more like, radiation equipment failed at a nuclear energy plant in Japan, but the backups they had prevented any disasters. So like,
okay, that's good.
They were prepared. We in the US detected missile launches in Russia that we thought were part of Y2K, but these were planned. It was part of Russia's conflict in its Republic of Chechnya. So it's just Russia being Russia.
Oh, Russia.
There were a few countries like Italy, Russia, and South Korea that didn't do all that much to prepare for Y2K. And they had no more problems than countries like ours that spent billions. And this is what leads people to believe that the problem was overstated and or even a hoax. John Koskinen. John, the man in charge of aforementioned...
The real JC.
aforementioned President Clinton's Y2K Justice League was quoted as saying, quote, "The only way to be a hero would be for half the world to stop and then somehow get started again, which was not one of our goals. Like a lot of things in government, if it works well, nobody cares much." Which is kind of accurate. I feel like there's some merit to that statement.
Sorry to go back to like local news. When things are handled correctly, people will be just like, well, we just spent money on nothing, or, you know, bullshit like that. And I'm like, if there wasn't a plan and it wasn't handled well, yeah, it's sort of like when things are working well, you almost don't notice, or
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not till shit hits the fan that everybody is like, well, wait, why the hell didn't we have a plan in place? But when everything goes smoothly, it's like, well, I guess we didn't need to do that.
Yeah, or that was a waste of money.
Yes. People can't always put that together. And there's not always a way to measure that accurately. I mean, in the case of Y2K, I guess you could say because some other countries didn't prepare as much and there really was no difference, that maybe, yeah, we did spend a lot of money we didn't need to. But I also didn't look into the specifics of, well, what does that really mean? When they say other countries didn't prepare as much, what is the as much? You know, how much money did they spend in comparison to our billions? You know, how do we measure the problems they had against the problems that other countries had? You know, without really diving into it, which I wasn't going to do. And we all know that. It's still hard to like make that comparison and say, well, we did waste a lot of money. But I will say that it seems like the problem itself as a whole was overblown. Whether we needed to spend the amount of money we did or not, the panic, I think, was probably unnecessary.
It seems that way. I will also say, though, JC is head of Y2K Justice League. So I also feel like you have to take what he says with a grain of salt, too, or said. You know, it's very true. I would go with like reading a lot of reports about it later by actual reporters, journalists who cite their sources. And then you have somebody like Bill Clinton, who definitely knows a thing or two about computers, being like, I mean, it wasn't a great thing, but like it wasn't end of the world level shit, is to me reputable.
Did you mean Bill Gates?
Bill Gates. Sorry.
Okay. I was like, I don't know that Clinton does know much about computers.
No.
Okay. And I hate to burst your bubble again, but the Justice League guy, his last name starts with a K. And I'm so sorry.
Well, JK, I was wrong.
Nice. Way to bring it back.
Thank you.
Well, Whether or not the preparation for Y2K kept a massive computer crash from happening or not, the update to a 4-digit year was obviously a necessary one. The software updates actually did help the city's transportation and telecommunications rebound much more quickly during the September 11th attacks. So that's how it kind of ties in there, that I guess if those updates hadn't been done, the things that were like keeping the city running when that happened wouldn't have come back as quickly. Again, very, very lightly scratching the surface on that, but I did think it was interesting, especially when we talk about tragedies.
Like real tragedies compared to like
yes,
the like panic about what we think is going to be a tragedy.
exactly.
There's like that morbid almost irony of like everybody was so panicked about Y2K, and then a year later this like atrocity happens.
Yes.
I feel like so many horrible things that have happened, at least in our lifetime, are not as nicely presented as like Y2K was, of like, here's time for everybody to panic about. They just seem like these things that were either like kept hush hush or like we didn't know about, like 9/11 or the housing market crash in 2008 or a bunch of other horrible things.
Yeah, and I think that's why, as I was looking through articles on this, it's sort of treated as a joke now, because compared to all these other very real and huge events that have happened to us in our lifetimes, it, like I was saying before, it's like at the very bottom of the list. Pretty much nothing happened.
It was really a letdown as a kid when I was like, there are no aliens, there are no dogs with sunglasses trying to hack into anything. I was very confused about it as a child because like all I kind of heard was like Y2K is like the world is ending type of disasters. And even the thing that like frustrates me is even as a kid, I knew that was kind of dumb. So it like frustrates me that a lot of adults were freaking out about it.
But clearly, like our parents must not have been, I'm sure they were talking about it, or like we were seeing it potentially like on the news or hearing it from others. But
I'm going to text mom.
oh yeah, because I don't recall them like freaking out about it.
Yeah. Let's see.
Which is probably why I only sort of remember casually like, oh, this is happening. Well, this is good timing because we're to the very lackluster conclusion, and you'll find out why soon. I wanted to talk about Y2K, like the actual crisis, not the aesthetic in pop culture. And I thought I was going to find a lot of really great stuff. And spoiler alert, I didn't. All I could find was more like Y2K fashion trends or, you know, that sort of thing. And I was hoping for like actual references of it in TV and movies. And for whatever reason, I wasn't really coming up with much. The only thing that I found that I also remembered was in Office Space, our guy, Peter, the main character, explains that his primary job is to help Initech, the fictional software company he works for, prepare for the, quote, 2000 switch.
Oh my God. I just recently watched that again and I can't believe I did not make that a connection.
Yeah.
God, I love
and
that
that's
movie.
The stuff I was hoping for. It's such a good movie. We'll have to cover that on one of our episodes too. I mean, it's it's depressing as an adult, but it's funny.
I also watched it way too young. But thank you for that. Yeah, yeah. But like I got to watch it with you. I don't know if mom knew.
I watched it at like a slumber party of all things.
Okay.
Now, why a group of teenage girls at a slumber party were watching a movie about a burned out guy who didn't go back to his job, I don't really know.
Because you had great taste, or because Jennifer Aniston at the time was a big deal, maybe.
Maybe that was it. But I do remember finding it funny then, and it is a funny movie. But when you watch it, when you're in like the corporate world and you're an adult, it gets less funny and more depressing.
Yeah. No, it definitely, because I hadn't watched it since I was probably a teenager. And then I went and watched it this past year. And it was like some parts are really funny and then some parts were like sad funny. And then other parts I was just like, oh God. And Kelsey has never seen it. And she was gaming and she just would stop and like sometimes laugh, but other times just be like, oh God, I feel that. And then like go back to gaming. Every now and then, just the line like, somebody has a case of the Mondays
Oh my
pops into.
gosh.
And then at the end when he's asking, or not at the end, but when he's asking his weird neighbor if like anybody says that on the construction site, and the dude is just like, no.
Fuck no, man.
God, that's a good
I
movie.
love him when he runs over to show him the breast exam. I'm like, were breast exams televised at one point? Is that what we're being led to believe, that like breast exams just happened on cable? Because I have some issues with that.
I always thought it was like a recording or no, because I don't remember. What I do remember,
Go
maybe
ahead.
it was from just like a movie or something.
But he like runs over and he's like, turn on channel whatever, man.
Yeah, I see. I always thought it was just from like a movie or like a doctor show. Like,
Maybe. I don't know what it was. It was weird.
it was so weird. But no, I also, it's so funny. One of the reasons I love that movie is when we started getting along again, because I think you showed it to me. I think you showed it to me when like, because you moved out right at like 18. And I would go over to your apartment with your roommate, who was your best friend at the time, and you and I would have like little movie sister dates. And I think that was no, maybe we watched it when you still lived with us. I don't know. It was when we started getting along again, so I have fond memories of it.
It's our sisterhood movie. Our mother isn't answering, is she?
Oh, I forgot to check. Hold on. No, she is not.
Well, you've ruined the whole episode, Mom. That's all I got. I had no other pop culture references, so I'm really glad you had the Y2K9 because that made me really happy.
I think I would love if you posted when you post this to social. I think you should post a picture of the book cover. It has
I will
3.76 stars on Goodreads. You know what? And
Wow.
only 93 ratings. Well, I'm going to change that. I'm giving it.
Here comes 94.
I'm giving it 5 stars.
Good.
Well, that was delightful.
I hope it was okay.
Yeah, I think it was fun, and I think that I'd be curious if people would like us to do some more episodes on almost like events like this. Obviously, some of them would be much more solemn than others, but like, I mean, we've talked about eventually talking or like covering 9/11, but also like the 2008 housing market crash, things like that, just because I feel like, one, they did happen during our childhood, and two, obviously like affected our generation.
Yeah. No, those are big ones. I had forgotten about the whole Mayan calendar ending, and I feel like that could be a fun one too.
Yeah, that's another one. I don't know. I'm interested in getting into more of the, I guess, like world and like world events that happened. Maybe not world, because not technically they, were more like America focused, but just like those national, there we go, like national events.
Yeah.
That happened during our childhood. They don't obviously fit into like the whole ruining, because it's like, obviously they're just terrible. And we're not going to be like, was this really bad or good? But just, I think talking about them would be interesting, especially because, I mean, some of them, frankly, like 9/11, I was really, really little during. And we've talked about it a little bit where, you were older, so you definitely remember more or remember things quite differently. But I think it could be interesting to discuss.
Yeah, I agree. If you guys want more of that, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, please. We love when you guys send us messages or comment on things or anything like that.
Yeah.
And we're really open to ideas on like if there are things you want us to cover or anything like that. We would love to hear them.
Yeah, we'd love to ruin your childhoods as well.
We would, truly.
It would just be an honor.
It absolutely would be.
And we appreciate your reviews. We've gotten some more on Apple Podcasts. Ooh. A really nice one from a fellow podcaster that was very kind and wonderful.
Have I seen that one yet?
I don't know if you've seen that one. And I mean, she put her name and the name of the podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and shout her out. I feel weird shouting out other podcasts only because like we're not anybody. And I feel like when you're shouting people out, you should like be somebody. So they're probably like, we don't care. But thank you, Clarissa from 30 Dirty and Dying, for the nice 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but thank you. I'm going to go read it.
She took the time to like write a little blurb and everything, and it was really kind.
That's super
And
cool.
I love her name.
Yeah, that's a cool name.
You can't go wrong with a Clarissa. Okay, my back's hurting.
Yep.
Because I'm old.
Squeakulator.
No caps. Back.
None caps. All right, I'm going to yeet out of here.
Okay.
Love you. Bye.
Love you too. Bye.
You've reached Sid
and Riley.
We can't come to the phone right now.
So leave a message after the beep. Ruining Our Childhood was filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Psych. But it is produced by us, Riley and Cassidy.
With music by Joseph Tuna Medish.
You can follow us on Instagram at Ruining Our Childhood Pod.
Or send us an email at ruiningourchildhoodpod@gmail.com.
Support the show through our Ko-fi account, ko-fi.com/Ruining Our Childhood Podcast.
Later!